Hey guys, welcome back to On the Throne, IGN's video recap show for Game of Thrones. As you can see, this week I am solo. I've been abandoned. Everyone's abandoned me in the office this Monday, but I'm going to make do. We still have a great prize giveaway. Stay tuned to the end of this episode of On the Throne for more details from the HBO store. Got some cool t-shirts. But right now, let's talk about a man without honor. Let's start with the character of Jaime Lannister. It is great to see Jaime back on the show, the Kingslayer himself. We haven't seen him since the first episode of this season. Still in chains, still covered in filth, but still that character that you hate to love and you love to hate. Still that character who has those great lines of dialogues that just cut to the core of whoever he's talking to. Much like his father, in fact. This episode, A Man Without Honor, is filled with great one-on-one scenes of dialogue, and Cat and Jaime is no different. Just like at the end of last season in the finale, they meet again. He's still in chains, and this time he's basically going to get killed. There's people outside who really want his head because he tried to escape. And Cat is such a strong female character, and yet Jaime, you know, the pisser that he is, he really has sort of an outsider's perspective to all this. He never, as somebody who's looked up to as a great warrior of the land, he really doesn't feel like he belongs just because maybe his relationship with Cersei. So he really put some things into perspective, like when he talks about vows and how one vow always contradicts another, and just the breaking of a vow itself is somehow horrible, even if the action is just. And again, the knife is pulled. We don't know what happens to him in the next episode. A big cliffhanger there. But another thing that's interesting is that even though Cat knows about Jaime and Cersei and their incestuous relationship, he still talks about it freely, also in a roundabout way, using it to sort of show Cat that he's more honorable than, of course, who's the most honorable person on this show so far, Ned Stark. But, you know, that's the way Jaime is. He kind of takes the piss out of anybody. Now, speaking of Cersei, Queen Cersei had two great scenes of dialogue this episode. One was with Sansa. It was really nice to see her sort of warm up to Sansa in a sense, and the fact that, you know, basically giving her a bit of advice about who she should love and who she shouldn't, and almost sort of showing her, if I can do it, if I can be in a loveless marriage and just love my kids, so can you. And then another scene with Tyrion, of all people, a very poignant, touching scene where Tyrion doesn't quite know how to console her when she's crying. She's actually opening up to Tyrion about her relationship with Jaime and how cruel Joffrey is. Again, one of these things, it's like Cersei's one of the great villains on the show, but every once in a while you get one of these scenes where you just get more layers and more sympathy for her, and it was just a really great scene. In keeping with the theme of vows and honor from this episode, Jon Snow, who took a vow of celibacy himself, is still towing around the very feisty and fiery Ygritte, who's become a very likable character, if not just for the fact that she's tormenting Jon Snow with her sexuality and teasing him about his morning wood and his blushing and his grumpy, stoic nature. And she's such a great character because you know that she likes him, you know she's attracted to him, and of course you know he's attracted to her, but she also needs to play him. She needs to escape because she knows if he takes her back to his people, they're gonna kill her, something he couldn't do himself. So she has to kind of like him and not like him at the same time, and it's just a really fun relationship, and there's usually not a lot of fun to be had north of the wall, so it's really cool to see that. Now, speaking of fun, one of the greatest pairings in this season is Arya and Tywin, and they are so fun to watch together. I could watch a whole season of these two. After this episode, though, a great bit of dialogue between them about the history of Harrenhal and Arya's heroines, and Arya telling him that most girls are idiots. A lot of fun quips between the two of them. I'm afraid the honeymoon might be over, simply because Arya's getting a little bolder, a little brasher in front of him. Still, of course, has murderous thoughts about stabbing him in the back with a knife. And then Tywin is slowly, even though he likes her a lot, he's unraveling more truths about her. He's already caught her in several lies. He already knows that she's not quite who she says she is, but he likes her, so he keeps her around. But I think this has to come to a head at some point. Meanwhile, across the Narrow Sea and all the way in Qarth, reality is finally setting in. Dany finally has to sort of admit to herself she has nothing. She is nothing. There's no more boasting and bragging, no more fire and blood this. She's like, I have no followers, and now I have no dragons. What am I gonna do? She wasn't even this lost in the desert when she was actually lost. And even when Jorah tries to console her, she still doubts him. But I think they might have come around at the end. The actual act of witnessing the brutal coup d'etat of the 13 and the betrayal of Zaro and all that, I think might bring Dany and Jorah back together a little bit, because really it was Zaro who had planted the words in her head about he really loves you and so forth. And while that might be true, it was causing her to doubt him a lot. But I think they might come back together now. Now let's head back to Winterfell for Theon's story. Theon, who's been such a great character this season. He's had such a great arc, a tragic arc, if you will. Yes, we all hate him. I hate him. The things he does are atrocious. But we understand why he's doing the things he's doing, because above all else, we know he will not be humiliated at this point. And we know there's no turning back. There simply is no turning back for him. And the more he seems in control now, the more he's actually out of control. And I think his story in this episode could be summed up best by the look he gives in the final scene, the final shot, the final moment of this episode, the big presentation of the horrors he claims to have done to the Winterfellians, the screaming of Maester Luwin in the background. You see in his eyes the doubt, the shame, and the sorrow and the regret, that look that he won't show to anybody else. Now's the time on The Throne when we give away some really cool prizes from the HBO store. That's store.hbo.com. We've got a King Beyond the Wall shirt and a Wildling shirt to give away. All you have to do to enter to win those items is to email me at winordie@ign.com and tell me your favorite part of the episode of Man Without Honor, and you're entered to win. Now, we really didn't get to everything this week. There's some Rob and Talissa stuff I left out. So hit the boards, talk about what you want to talk about, and join us next week for another episode of On the Throne.